Hi, I'm really glad you're here. This is an original story from my side. If you love intense family drama with a strong mom protecting her kid, stick around. You're in the right place. My name is Caitlin Reynolds. I'm a financial advisor who works from home in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and what happened that day still makes my blood run cold. She pointed right at my daughter. She's nothing in this family. Then she looked at me and said, "So take her and get out." The whole room froze. 20 people at her birthday party, forks halfway to their mouths, eyes darting between us. My 12-year-old stood next to me, clutching her plate like a shield. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just smiled, calm, steady, and said one thing. Her face drained of color the second she realized what I meant. Because the house we were standing in was never really hers. People think you get a warning before you become the villain in someone else's story. A dramatic pause, a bad feeling, something. For me, it started months earlier with bills piling up, routines I never asked for, and one simple truth nobody wanted to face: I had been paying for everything. If you want to know exactly how one comment turned into the moment I walked away with everything they thought was theirs, keep watching. If you're enjoying this kind of raw family drama and want more stories like this, hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Let's dive in. Our townhouse in Tulsa was one of those two-story places with a nice front porch and a backyard just big enough for a swing set Sydney barely used anymore. From the outside, it looked perfect. Quiet street, good schools nearby, the kind of neighborhood people post pictures of on real estate sites. Inside, it was different. I handled the mortgage payments every month from my separate account. The auto pay was set up years ago when Ryan and I first bought the place together. Property taxes, insurance, utilities, even the occasional roof repair or HVAC fix, all came out of my earnings as a financial advisor. Ryan contributed what he could from his job at the engineering firm, but his salary mostly covered groceries, gas, and his own expenses. The heavy stuff landed on me. Robert had the stroke about 18 months earlier. One morning, he just couldn't get out of bed properly. The doctors called it ischemic, said recovery would be slow. He needed daily blood thinners, physical therapy 3 times a week, someone to help him transfer from bed to wheelchair, and constant monitoring for blood pressure spikes. Patricia treated the whole thing like a personal insult. She would sigh loudly whenever the pill organizer needed refilling or when the home health aide was late. Gradually, those tasks shifted to me. I made the pharmacy runs, scheduled the appointments, sat with Robert during his exercises when the aide wasn't there. Patricia never said thank you. Instead, she reminded me this was the Thompson family home. She said it like the name came with a title deed that excluded me. Sydney was the only one who treated me like I belonged. She would quietly help fold laundry or bring Robert a blanket without being asked. She noticed when someone was upset just from the way they closed a door. At 12, she already had that kind of quiet awareness. But Patricia never called her granddaughter. When friends or neighbors came over, she would introduce her as Caitlin's daughter. Like Sydney was temporary luggage I brought into the marriage. Sydney felt it. She started staying in her room more, reading or drawing, trying to take up less space. I told myself it was just Patricia being old-fashioned. I told myself Ryan would eventually step in. I told myself things would get better once Robert improved. That was wishful thinking. Then Kelsey and Brandon showed up. Kelsey arrived first on a humid Thursday evening in late spring, pulling 2 large suitcases behind her like she was moving back after college. She was 29, freshly divorced, and dressed in yoga pants and an oversized hoodie that screamed, "I'm healing." She dropped her bags in the foyer and hugged Patricia so tightly it looked painful. Patricia started crying immediately, calling her my poor baby over and over. Kelsey sniffled and said her ex's family had been awful, making her cook, clean, pay bills like some kind of servant. Patricia gasped like she'd heard about war crimes. Brandon rolled in 2 days later. He was 32, between jobs again, and showed up with a duffel bag, a gaming console, and a vague story about needing a place to regroup. He took the basement room without asking. The house that had felt crowded with 5 people suddenly felt like a pressure cooker with 7. That first night, Kelsey wandered into my home office, the small room off the kitchen with the big desk, dual monitors, and locked file cabinet where I kept client portfolios and tax software. She leaned against the doorframe and said, "This place has good light. I could use it for my journaling and meditation stuff." I looked up from my screen. "It's my workspace," I said. She shrugged. "Mom said I could have it. I need space to process everything." Patricia appeared behind her like she'd been summoned. "Kelsey needs a quiet spot," she announced. "You can move your computer upstairs." I didn't move. "This room is for work. Client calls, secure files. It stays mine." Patricia's eyes narrowed. "You're in our house, Caitlin." I met her gaze. "And I've been paying the mortgage." Ryan walked past the doorway right then, heard the tone, and kept walking. He didn't say a word. Kelsey pouted for a second, then smiled. "Fine. I'll tell Mom we tried." She left. Patricia stayed long enough to give me a look that said this wasn't over. It wasn't. Kelsey wasted no time making herself at home. The next morning, she carried her yoga mat and a stack of self-help books into my office while I was on a client call. I muted the line long enough to say, "Put those back. This isn't a spare room." She rolled her eyes and left, but not before dropping a book on the floor with a thud that made my microphone pick it up. Brandon was quieter about claiming space. He set up his gaming setup in the living room, cables running across the floor like tripwires. Robert's wheelchair had to navigate around them now. When I asked him to tidy up, he muttered, "It's temporary," and kept playing. Patricia started assigning tasks that afternoon. She handed Sydney a basket of laundry and said, "Fold these for Kelsey. She's tired from the drive." Sydney looked at me. I shook my head once. Sydney set the basket down gently and walked away. Patricia's voice sharpened. "Excuse me?" Sydney kept going upstairs. That evening at dinner, Patricia served plates in order. Herself first, then Brandon, then Kelsey, then Ryan, then Robert, then me. Sydney got hers last, pushed to the edge of the table. After everyone finished, Patricia snapped her fingers. "Sydney, clear the dishes." Sydney glanced at me again. I said quietly, "You can take your own plate to the sink if you want." She did. Patricia's fork clattered, the rest of them too. I answered no. The table went silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator. Kelsey smirked. Brandon kept eating like nothing happened. Ryan stared at his empty plate. Patricia leaned forward. "This is why she's so spoiled." No discipline. Sydney's shoulders tensed, but she didn't cry. She just looked smaller. The next few days followed the same pattern. Kelsey would leave wet towels in the hallway. Brandon tracked mud from the backyard onto the carpet. Patricia would call Sydney over for small jobs. Bring water, pick up wrappers, vacuum the stairs. Each time Sydney hesitated, I stepped in. She doesn't have to. Patricia's responses got shorter. "You're raising a brat. She's lazy. This is my house." Ryan tried once to mediate. He pulled me aside in the kitchen and whispered, "It's just helping out. Don't escalate." I looked at him. "It's not helping. It's ordering a child around like staff." He sighed and walked away. I started keeping records. Every bill I paid, I photographed the statement. Mortgage, utility payments, pharmacy receipts for Robert's meds, insurance premiums. I saved them in a secure folder on my work drive. Not because I planned anything yet, just because patterns matter in my job. When numbers don't add up, you notice. One Saturday, Patricia announced a family meeting in the living room. Everyone gathered except Robert, who stayed in his room with the TV on low. Patricia sat in the big armchair like it was a throne. "We need to organize chores better," she said. "Kelsey is recovering. Brandon is job hunting. Ryan works long hours. Caitlin," she paused and looked at me, "can handle more around here." I waited. She continued, "Sydney is old enough to contribute properly. Dishes every night, trash, helping with Robert when the aide isn't here." Sydney sat on the couch arm next to me, knees pulled up. I put my hand on her back lightly. "No," I said. Patricia blinked. "What? Sydney isn't the maid. She's 12. She does kid things. Homework, friends, normal stuff. Kelsey laughed under her breath. Brandon crossed his arms. Ryan shifted uncomfortably. Patricia's voice dropped. You're getting mouthy. This is how families work. I smiled slightly. The same calm one I use with difficult clients. Families don't treat children like hired help. The room stayed tense for a long moment. Patricia stood up. We'll see. She walked out. Kelsey and Brandon followed. Ryan lingered, then left too. Sydney whispered, "Thanks, Mom." I squeezed her shoulder. Always. That night I lay awake, listening to the house settle. The creaks of old wood, the hum of the fridge, Robert's oxygen machine down the hall. I thought about the mortgage statements in my folder, about how every payment had my name on the transfer, about how long I'd been the only one keeping the lights on. I didn't know it then, but the pieces were already moving. The assignments didn't stop after the family meeting. Patricia found new ways to test boundaries. One morning, she called Sydney from the kitchen while I was upstairs on a Zoom call with a client. "Sydney, come peel these potatoes for lunch." Sydney appeared in my doorway, eyes wide. I muted the mic. "Go back to your room. Finish your homework." She nodded and disappeared. Patricia's voice carried up the stairs. "Caitlin, she's not doing anything useful." Later that week, Kelsey asked Sydney to carry her laundry basket upstairs. Sydney looked at me from across the room. I shook my head. Kelsey huffed. "You're so rude. It's not hard." Brandon chimed in from the couch. "Kid needs to learn responsibility." Patricia joined immediately. "Exactly. In this house, everyone pulls their weight." I walked over and stood between them and Sydney. "She pulls her weight by being a kid. School, art, club, normal life. You want help? Ask an adult." Patricia crossed her arms. "You're turning her against the family." I didn't answer. I just took Sydney's hand and led her upstairs. Ryan caught me in the hallway afterward. "Mom's upset. Maybe let Sydney do small things. It keeps the peace." I looked straight at him. "Peace at the cost of my daughter feeling like hired help? No." He sighed and went back downstairs. I kept documenting. Every time a bill came due, I paid it from my account and saved the confirmation. Mortgage, electric, water, Robert's co-pays for therapy sessions. The total added up faster than anyone realized. My emergency fund was shrinking, but the house stayed standing because of it. One evening, Patricia cornered me in the garage while I was taking out recycling. "You think you're so independent, but this is the Thompson house. Ryan's name is on the deed, too." I set the bin down, and my name is right beside his. I've paid every payment for years. She laughed once, sharp. "You wouldn't dare stop." I didn't reply. I just walked back inside. Sydney started sleeping with her door cracked open. She said it made her feel safer. I moved my laptop to a locked drawer in the bedroom at night. I changed passwords on all financial apps. Small precautions that felt bigger every day. The tension built quietly. Kelsey complained about the Wi-Fi being slow in the guest room. Brandon left dishes piled in the sink until they smelled. Patricia kept a running list of things Caitlin should do on the fridge. Grocery shopping for everyone, scheduling Robert's next MRI, organizing the pantry. I ignored the list. One Sunday afternoon, Patricia tried again. She walked into the living room where Sydney was reading on the couch. "Sydney, go help Kelsey organize her closet." Sydney closed her book slowly. I was in the kitchen doorway. "No," Sydney said clearly. Her voice shook a little, but it held. Patricia turned red. "What did you say?" Sydney repeated, "No." Patricia spun toward me. "Teach your child respect." I stepped forward. "She has respect for people who treat her like a person." Brandon laughed from the stairs. "Drama queen much?" Kelsey appeared behind him. "This is why nobody likes her." Ryan walked in from the garage at that moment. He looked around the room, saw the standoff, and said nothing. He just went to the fridge for a drink. Patricia pointed at Sydney. "You're lucky we let you stay here at all." Sydney's eyes filled, but she didn't drop her gaze. I put my arm around her shoulders. "That's enough." The room stayed charged for a long beat. Then Patricia turned and stormed upstairs. Kelsey and Brandon followed. Ryan finally spoke. "Caitlin, can we talk later?" I didn't answer. I took Sydney to her room and sat with her until she calmed down. That night, I opened my banking app and stared at the balance. $28,000 in savings I'd built over years of careful planning. I transferred a small amount to a new high-yield account in only my name, just in case. The next morning, everything felt heavier, but I knew one thing clearly. The line had been crossed, and I wasn't going back over it. The laptop incident happened on a Tuesday. I stepped out to take a quick call in the hallway, 2 minutes maximum. When I came back, Kelsey was in my office holding her phone up like she was filming. "Guys, check this out. My sister-in-law's fancy setup. She's always working." She laughed and swung the phone around. Her elbow knocked the travel mug on the desk. Hot coffee splashed across the keyboard and screen. The laptop hissed. The screen flickered, then went black. I froze. That machine had every client file, encrypted spreadsheets, tax software licenses, work worth hundreds of thousands in managed assets. Kelsey looked down. "Oops, it's just coffee, right? It'll dry." I unplugged it immediately and flipped it over. "Get out!" My voice was flat. Kelsey rolled her eyes. "You're so dramatic." She left, still holding her phone. Sydney appeared in the doorway. "Mom?" I crouched down. "It's okay. You didn't do anything." She nodded, but her eyes were wide. I spent the next hour in damage control, backing up what I could from the cloud, calling IT support, notifying key clients there might be a delay. That evening, Ryan came home. I showed him the ruined laptop. Kelsey did this while filming. He winced. She didn't mean it. I stared at him. Intent doesn't fix the damage. He looked away. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a bank alert. Transfer out $28,000. From my personal savings account, only my name on it, to an account I didn't recognize. I opened the app. The transaction note said, "Family support." I found Ryan in the kitchen. "Where is my money?" He swallowed. "Kelsey needed it for lawyer fees. Her divorce is messy. Mom was worried she'd lose everything." I repeated slowly, "My savings account. In my name." Ryan rubbed his face. "We're married. It's our money." I shook my head. "Not this one. You transferred without asking." Patricia walked in. "Don't make a scene. Kelsey is struggling." I turned to her. "And my work laptop is ruined because of her. Client data at risk. My reputation." Patricia waved it off. "You'll fix it. You're good at that." Brandon wandered in and leaned against the counter. "Chill. Accidents happen." I looked at all three of them. Ryan wouldn't meet my eyes. I spent the day on the phone with the bank disputing the transfer. They said it would take time, up to 60 days for investigation. Meanwhile, I moved what remained to a new account Kelsey and Ryan couldn't access. Sydney noticed I was quieter. She asked at bedtime, "Are we okay?" I hugged her. "We're going to be fine. I promise." That weekend, Patricia planned her 50th birthday party. 20 people invited, neighbors, old friends, a few relatives. She told me to handle setup. I said order catering. She scoffed. "You live here. You can help." I didn't reply. I booked 2 one-way tickets to Denver instead. Quietly. One way, the pieces were falling into place faster now. Patricia's birthday party arrived on a sunny Saturday. The house smelled like catered barbecue and fresh flowers. Tables set up in the backyard, string lights already on even though it was still daylight. 20 guests milled around, laughing, clinking glasses, taking photos. I stayed close to Sydney the whole time. She wore her favorite blue dress but kept tugging at the hem like she wanted to disappear. Patricia floated through the crowd in a bright red outfit, hugging everyone, telling stories about her baby Kelsey coming home. Halfway through the afternoon, Patricia called for a toast. Everyone gathered near the patio. She raised her glass. "To family, the ones who stick together no matter what. Cheers." Then she spotted Sydney standing beside me. Her smile tightened. She pointed directly at Sydney. "And to remind everyone, this one?" She paused for effect. "Your daughter is nothing in this family. So take her and get out." The backyard went quiet. A few guests shifted uncomfortably. Kelsey smirked behind her wine glass. Brandon nodded like he'd been waiting for it. Ryan froze with his plate in hand. Sydney's face crumpled, not into tears, into stunned silence. Her hand gripped mine hard. I didn't raise my voice. I smiled, calm, the way I do when a client tries to bully me into bad advice. I looked at Patricia and said one word. Okay. Patricia laughed once, thinking it was a bluff. See? She knows her place. I turned to Sydney. Go upstairs. Pack your backpack. Essentials only. Sydney hesitated. I nodded. She went. Patricia crossed her arms. You're not serious. I walked to the entry table where mail and folders sat. I picked up the one I'd placed there weeks ago. The deed copy, mortgage statements, auto pay history. I held them up. My name is on every payment. For years. Auto pay canceled this morning. Patricia's face changed. Not anger, recognition, fear. Ryan stepped forward. Caitlin, I cut him off with a look. We're leaving, right now. Guests whispered. Someone coughed. Patricia whispered, You're ruining everything. I shrugged. I'm stopping the ruin. Sydney came down with her backpack and a small duffel, eyes red but steady. I took her hand. We walked through the house past staring faces. Patricia moved like she might block the door. Ryan didn't move at all. I opened the front door. The Oklahoma sun hit us warm. We stepped out. The door closed behind us with a soft click. We didn't look back. We flew to Denver that same evening. I had a 1-year contract lined up with a wealth management firm there. Better pay, remote flexibility, and breathing room. Sydney slept most of the flight. When we landed, she looked out the window at the mountains and said, It feels different here. Our temporary apartment was small but clean. 2 bedrooms, big windows, near a good school district. Sydney started 6th grade 2 weeks later. She joined the art club right away. She laughed louder at dinner. She stopped flinching when doors closed hard. Back in Tulsa, the calls started immediately. Patricia left voicemails, long rants about betrayal. Ryan texted apologies mixed with pleas. Kelsey sent voice notes crying about how targeted she felt. Brandon texted once, You can't do this to family. I didn't respond to any of them. The house notices began arriving a month later. Late payment warnings, then delinquency letters. The lender sent a formal default notice after 90 days. Foreclosure proceedings started quietly, the way they do in Oklahoma when autopay stops and no one catches up. I monitored from afar through online portals. I didn't gloat. I just confirmed what I'd already known. The house only stood because I'd held it up. Sydney asked one night, Do you miss them? I thought about it. I miss what I hoped they could be, but not what they were. She nodded and went back to her sketchbook. Months passed. Denver felt like home faster than I expected. I opened a small, independent advisory practice on the side. Sydney made friends who didn't question why she had only one parent at school events. She stopped apologizing for taking up space. The foreclosure notice became official. Auction date set. That's when Ryan called from a blocked number. Dad's in the hospital again. Meds got mixed up. Mom can't handle it. I listened. Is he stable? Ryan's voice cracked. They're trying. Please, Caitlin, we need help. I looked out at the snow on the Rockies. I did help. For years. He whispered, I'm sorry. I said sorry doesn't change choices. Then I hung up. I didn't go back. I flew back to Tulsa 3 months later. Not alone. With my attorney and Sydney. We walked into the townhouse on a cold afternoon. The place looked worn. Curtains drawn, dishes stacked, air stale. Patricia opened the door. She looked smaller, lines deeper around her eyes. Robert was in his wheelchair near the staircase, blanket over his lap, staring at the floor. Ryan stood behind her in the hallway, arms crossed like he was bracing for impact. Kelsey sat on the couch, scrolling her phone. Brandon leaned against the wall with his arms folded. Patricia spoke first, voice thin. So you came back? I didn't smile. We're here to discuss the property. Matthew stepped forward with his briefcase. Good afternoon. Matthew Collins. I'm representing Caitlin Reynolds in this matter. We moved to the dining table. No one offered coffee. Matthew laid out the folder. The loan is in default. Monthly payments missed for over 90 days. The lender has initiated foreclosure proceedings under Oklahoma law. If not reinstated, the property will go to public auction. Patricia's lips tightened. This is our home. We've lived here for decades. Matthew nodded calmly. It's collateral securing a mortgage. The deed shows joint ownership between Caitlin Reynolds and Ryan Thompson, but payments have been made exclusively from Miss Reynolds' account for the past 7 years. Auto pay records confirm it. Ryan shifted. We can work something out. Mom and Dad can't move right now. I looked at him. You had time to work something out before I left. Matthew continued. The lender has agreed to a reinstatement option. Full arrears payment plus fees, followed by refinance under new terms. But only if title transfers completely to Miss Reynolds via quitclaim deed, signed today. Silence stretched. Kelsey lowered her phone. You're kidding, Brandon muttered. This is insane. Patricia's hands trembled on the table. You're taking the house from us. From Robert. From the family. I spoke quietly. I paid for the house. Every mortgage payment, every tax bill, every repair. I carried it while you treated my daughter like she didn't belong. Now I'm protecting what I built. Robert lifted his head slightly. His voice was raspy but clear. Sign it, Pat. I'm tired of fighting. Patricia looked at him, eyes wet. She turned back to me. What about us? Where do we go? Matthew answered before I could. That's outside the scope of this agreement. The lender will not extend terms without the deed transfer. Ryan tried one last time. Caitlin, please. For Dad. For old times. I met his eyes. Old times ended when your mother called Sydney nothing in front of 20 people, and you said nothing. The room stayed quiet except for the tick of the wall clock. Patricia stared at the papers. Then she picked up the pen. Her hand shook as she signed. Ryan signed next, eyes down. Brandon and Kelsey watched without speaking. Matthew collected the documents. I'll file immediately. The reinstatement check will process within days. He looked at me. We're done here. I stood. Sydney had stayed silent the whole time, standing close to my side. She hadn't looked away once. I took her hand. We're leaving, Patricia whispered. You're heartless. I paused at the door. If protecting my child makes me heartless, then yes. We walked out. The door closed softly behind us. No dramatic slam, just final. The townhouse sold 4 weeks later. Market was steady. Clean title, no liens. Proceeds went straight into a trust for Sydney's college and a separate account for my Denver practice. I expanded, hired an assistant, took on more high-net-worth clients. Business grew quietly. Patricia and Robert moved to an assisted living community on the east side of Tulsa. Monthly fees were high. They sold what assets they had left to cover it. Robert's care stayed consistent, but the family visits dropped off. Ryan rented a small apartment near his job. He stopped texting after the divorce papers were served. Kelsey moved to Dallas for a fresh start. Collectors followed her for credit card debt. Brandon bounced between friends' couches before landing a warehouse job in Oklahoma City. Sydney and I stayed in Denver. She turned 13 that spring. She painted murals for the school art show. She laughed easily again. She asked once, "Do you think they regret it?" I answered honestly, "It doesn't matter. Regret doesn't fix what they broke. We moved forward. That's what counts." I chose my daughter over everything else. No hesitation, no second thoughts. And every day since, I've known it was the right choice. Thanks for listening to the whole story. If you've ever had to draw a hard line to protect someone you love, drop a comment below. I read them all. Like, if you believe no one gets to call your child nothing, subscribe for more stories about real family moments and hard choices.